Good afternoon. My name is Scott Benjamin. I'm Director of Sales and Marketing for FunSpot Manufacturing, and this is the third of an unknown number of webinars that we'll be taking care of. Sorry, Al, you freaked me out when you lost that. Change the screen. We've trying to tackle some questions on our customers' minds and hearts and things that they're thinking about, and just wanting to be a resource and to help you think about how you can best work in and through this current time as we look towards reopening. I traveled from South Carolina down to Georgia today to just kind of see what's going on in Georgia, and as different entities start to open up and what they're looking like, just to kind of get boots on the ground and have a firsthand look and see what's happening. So today we have invited Eddie Childs to come and talk with us about marketing. I met Eddie last week through one of our park owners. Eddie works with a company called Mediagistics and has quite a significant background, and he can share with you a little bit more about that. But we're happy to have him just talk about what we can do today and what are some things that we should be thinking about doing in the very near future as it comes to marketing your family entertainment center, adventure park, trampoline park. So Eddie, I'm going to turn it over to you. Just by way of housekeeping, if you have a question, feel free just to go down to the bottom and go into the chat screen, type your question. If you feel comfortable and want to unmute yourself when there's a pause, you can also do that. That's been very good. And we just want to create a community. We found that we've got 20 or 30 or more people that will attend over the course. We get up to maybe 40 or 50 by the time we're done. And different people have different things to offer. We had last week a commercial owner talk about, hey, I picked up a trampoline park because one defaulted a year ago, and I don't know much about that, but I know a lot about commercial real estate. So if you have commercial real estate questions, I'd be happy to answer those questions. So it's that kind of community that we're building here with the town hall. At the end, this will be recorded, and any resources or references or the ability to contact Eddie will be available at our website, townhall.funspot.com, which I'll type in the chat window here towards the end. So Eddie, thanks for taking your time this afternoon, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yeah, not a problem, Scott. So yeah, my name is Eddie Childs, and I'm the inbound marketing manager for Mediagistic. As Scott mentioned, we're a Tampa-based agency. We work with a lot of different clients. We work with fitness clients, trampoline parks. We're the agency of record for the island of St. Lucia, and maybe I'll have an opportunity a little later to show you some creative that we help them develop that they used in television commercials and on social. We work with a lot of home services businesses, outdoor power, kind of you name it, and we work in those industries. In terms of my responsibilities, I handle all of the agency's inbound marketing activities, including copywriting, social media, traditional SEO, and local SEO. So I have a pretty broad range of experience there. I've been doing copywriting for about 20 years now, paid search and SEO for the past 15, and then social media for the past 10 years, which is about as long as social media advertising has really been around in the form that we know it. So I have had a pretty broad range of experience in terms of my exposure to those different advertising channels. So according to a recent study by Google, 84% of US consumers say that how companies act during the current market is important to their loyalty moving forward. So surviving the crisis here is really about a lot more than just surviving the crisis. And the inbound marketing process, which includes all those different things that I just mentioned, copywriting on your website, paid search, social media, SEO, both traditional and local SEO, the Google Map Hack, what you do in those places really should be driven by the inbound marketing process. So HubSpot has this that they call attract, engage, convert, delight, retain, right? And if you apply those principles, and I don't work for HubSpot or anything, it's just the inbound marketing philosophy is really driven by some of the thought work that HubSpot did about a decade ago. If you apply those principles, you can really get into the buyer's collective heads. And I think those principles right now are super useful for understanding that buyer's journey and getting a sense of where your consumers are mentally right now. So in terms of your communication strategy as a brand, we're seeing 3 phases of communication happening both on social and off social right now. It's just social is kind of your megaphone. It's the place where your brand voice is probably the most visible, and the frequency of communications that you're putting out there on social are happening probably at a much higher rate than, say, in a paid search result or something like that. So there's the initial reactionary phase that we all went through, kind of announcing closures and kind of that scramble of who's closed, who's open, what are we doing? There's the current phase of responding to consumers and maintaining a level of visibility, and really getting in there and creating a presence, kind of during this unprecedented time. And then there's going to be the new normal that we're all going to start moving into, depending on the rate of when the economy starts opening back up. So we're moving it obviously at the speed of the government here and the speed of the healthcare system in order to kind of get us back to a place where we can start opening up those public spaces. But that's really the third phase, right? That shift back to the new normal that's going to happen once the economy opens back up. So there are kind of, some different strategy. We've already gone through the first phase of communication, really, with the closures so there's really your strategy around the current phase of responding to consumers and maintaining that level of visibility. And then there's going to be that new phase when you start going on the offense and start really shifting back into kind of doing business in those spaces. So right now, creating a meaningful connection with your consumer and opening a dialogue with them is probably more important than ever before. And thinking about their needs and what they're going through is really the fundamental piece here. So that buyer's journey that I was just talking about, attract, engage, convert, delight, retain. Those are, and I don't really like that delight word in there, but really the idea is to wow the consumer at that phase. But those principles are going to be really fundamental in terms of getting into that buyer's head and figuring out how to communicate with them right now. So good examples are, right now is probably not the time to be heavily pushing offers and promotions. People aren't super receptive to offers and promotions right now, but it's a good time, on the other hand, to publicly address any kind of relevant or ongoing issues you might be facing as a brand because of the coronavirus outbreak. Plus, just kind of understanding what the consumer's been doing, in their free time. They're all sitting at home for the most part, and you're seeing, you can look at search interest or other tools to see where the consumer's head is in terms of what their current interests are. So we're going to open this up to questions in a minute, but in terms of right now, Google offers these recommendations, and I think they're good ones. Acknowledge the new reality, give people a credible, detailed, and current status update about your operations, and reinforce that you're there to help. Regularly update communications across your website, blogs, social handles, and Google My Business page. And I think that one's really important. It's not just how you communicate, but the frequency of communication that's going to be important here, because people are spending a lot more time on social. And then flexibility, right? So helping the consumer with cancellations, refunds, customer service questions, and just generally being available and kind of there for them, So, I think that's what this means at the end of the day when Google says that, what a brand does during this time is really going to resonate way beyond what's happening right now in terms of how they're treating the consumer and how they're kind of, navigating this crisis. And that's the general communication strategy that I think a lot of marketers are really recommending right now. So, how are we doing? Is that okay on time?
No, you're great, Eddie. I appreciate kind of that heads up. Just kind of 30,000 view look of kind of what marketing looks like, what you should be doing. If you have questions, sure. You can unmute yourself, or if you don't feel like doing that, feel free just to type something in the chat, and we'll get that over to Eddie. As you were talking, I was thinking, and just came off of another webinar that the IATP did, and they were talking about some real tactical things around marketing, mm-hmm. i.e., get your mascot out and challenge someone to a 6 foot away dance off and film that and post those kind of viral things. And so there's lots of different tactical things. So curious if you had any thoughts around, one, kind of what are maybe some other tactical items that you could think of that might recommend, and then two, thinking about frequency of postings. And I'm thinking Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn, and what other perhaps newer social media platforms that might be good for marketing.
Yeah. So frequency, I mean, on the channels where the broadest kind of place where your consumers are engaging, Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, for some of your brands, I would recommend, with Facebook and Instagram, I would recommend communicating at least daily. There's also, you can run ads on the back end of Facebook that aren't going to appear on your wall. But I would definitely recommend a daily communication strategy on those particular media. And then, Twitter is a place where, Twitter can handle multiple communications, even the same communication over and over again, because of how quickly the shelf life on that content expires, So I would definitely recommend, that's the blocking and tackling, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. There's a lot of possibility for brands right now on TikTok. TikTok's a big brand, particularly if you are a consumer brand that engages and has a product that's interesting for younger social media users. The advertising platform for TikTok is still in its infancy. I think they're only partnering with agencies and really large brands right now. So I don't think there's a lot of, paid engagement that you can really do in that platform, but it's an interesting platform to explore for sure. And then Snapchat, I've seen some stats that say that Snapchat is seeing increased engagement during this time, but it's people are engaging at a much higher rate right now, whereas they'd kind of moved away and were, Facebook, Instagram, a lot of these other platforms have rolled out stories, which have sort of sucked away Snapchat's audience. But that platform there's still a large user base. It still trends younger. So, I'd probably recommend those 4 or 5 channels there, out of the ones that.
Yeah, Rohit, I see your question, but I wanted to follow up real quick, and then we'll get to yours. How about YouTube?
Oh yeah, sorry, YouTube. Sometimes I forget to think of YouTube as a social channel because it's so much more than just a social channel. YouTube is actually also the world's 2nd largest search engine. So it's in terms of volumes of search, Google's the 2nd largest search engine. YouTube's 2nd largest search engine, and then it's also the 3rd largest social media platform behind Facebook and Instagram. So there's tons of potential in YouTube. A lot of that a lot of my thought around YouTube is think a lot about user intent, right? Like, what are they searching for? How can you optimize those descriptions in order to get found? And then also create compelling content. You know, you can cross leverage a lot of the video content that you're creating for these other channels and use them maybe in a longer sort of format on YouTube. Yeah, and the search behavior on YouTube, interestingly, also trends a lot younger. So people who are younger millennials and you know, kind of on the tail end of the millennial sort of like generation, they're using YouTube a lot more as a search engine. They'll go right to YouTube and search instead of using even Google, because they want to see how to do something. They want to visually experience it a lot more.
Yeah, on the call before this, they were saying things like, again, I said that the dance off with your mascot against a customer, you know, filming yourself going through the ninja obstacle course, or filming one of your staff members going through to say, hey, this is how you do that. So those are all longer form, you know, videos that I think make a lot of sense, not only on your standard social media, but on that YouTube channel if you have one or want to build one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a huge need right now. I mean, for content that informs, entertains, connects, and ultimately fills that space. You know, the consumer is looking, I think at least, for a sense of normalcy. You know, they're looking for a sense of connection. They want to connect with other people. They want to connect with brands. So, you know, some of that content, even though they're experiencing it vicariously, has a potential to resonate maybe even a lot more than it would kind of during normal times. So, you know, I think those are some really great ideas for sure.
Thank you. Al, you want to read Rohit's question?
Yeah, it's based on today's time where Google PPC is very important and almost you can't do without it with competition around. Should we still keep doing SEO, and for how long should we continue SEO?
Yeah, so SEO, that's a very good question. So, you know, if you look at the anatomy of search results right now, they've completely changed versus, you know, 6 years ago, 5-6 years ago, when it was 12 blue links, right? You've now got paid search up here, living kind of at the very top of search results. And usually there may be a featured snippet. There's the local map pack, and then the blue links are tucked beneath that, right? That's on a lot of different search results right now. The really high intent search results, real short tail search results, particularly, you'll see that traditional SEO is way at the bottom. Now, that featured snippet that lives right beneath the paid search results, that is something that generally gets pulled from organic search. So, you know, on a SERP where there's a snippet, you do have the ability to win that SERP and even place above the map pack and directly beneath the paid search ads. So you can target SERPs that have you know, answer boxes and snippets and see if you can get your brand there. And that also optimizes you for voice search, you know, search without screens. So that's one use case where SEO is still super useful. And then there's the long tail. So, you know, outside of really short tail search results, there's hundreds, if not thousands of key terms aligned around your brand that you can optimize for that are more on the long tail, where Google really is maybe not really displaying a lot of paid search results because they don't connect immediately to something that it can monetize or that you as a brand can monetize, but they're a little further up in that buyer cycle, right? They're higher in the funnel. So in other words, again, if you really start digging deep into the buyer's journey and start thinking like, okay, well, what kinds of questions lead someone to my brand ultimately, right? If you can really dig deep into that entire tree of query-based searches that ultimately lead to something that eventually can be monetized. So, you know, a good example would be, is jumping, for a trampoline park, is jumping healthy for you, right? It's not something you want to buy in a paid search result. If you Google that right now, I can guarantee you most likely there's not even paid search results on that SERP. But if you can start building that funnel all the way from that really intent-based, that high intent-based stuff, the kind of broad-based stuff, and build it down into a more intent-based sort of sequence of content. So in other words, they reach your website based on, is jumping healthy? Maybe they find a blog around is it healthy for children? This is a good question, right? They enter your website, they read a blog about it, and then maybe they discover more content that's lower in the funnel, and takes them closer and closer to a transactional page on your website. In that sense, SEO is super productive for your brand. And here's the other thing about SEO. It doesn't turn off, right? So in other words, when you pull your Google search funds and cease to run Google search, it's like turning off a tap on a spigot, right? Just the water just ceases to run, and you get what you get from your paid search results, but your optimization on your website, organic SEO, will continue to produce over time without any further investment from you, other than maybe updating the schema on your site, making sure the key terms that it's optimized for are still relevant, things like that. Continue to produce traffic to your website that you can market to and remarket to in a lot of different ways. So that was a really long way of saying, yes, I think you should keep doing SEO. And how long should you continue to do it? I think until Google becomes completely pay to play. It's just a matter of shifting those SEO priorities out. And obviously, you don't want to just focus on SEO, right? Like, paid search is hugely important for your bottom line. Social media presence, particularly with family entertainment, is enormous, right? Because that's where you can really, that's your megaphone, like I said earlier. That's where you can really speak to your consumer really directly. So when you put all these things together, you'll have a rich kind of 360 digital marketing presence. You just don't want to rely too much on any one given channel. I personally think, that it's sort of like investing, where you want to invest in a lot of different you want a rich, diverse portfolio. You don't want to just invest into one stock. Yeah,
it's better to cast a wider net than to try to single and get good at one thing. So our own Matt Hubbard has a question for you.
Yeah, so
okay.
I've had to talk to a lot of operators who have had to either furlough or lay off some of their staff that were responsible for doing the SEO and doing the Google AdWords and social media and stuff like that, leaving some operators clueless on what to do and how to handle that. And so I'm curious to know, like, what resources, even basic or advanced, that might be available besides doing a Google search, like social media for dummies, that operators could reference, even if it meant getting support from an outside company, that you might recommend.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of third-party agencies out there. I obviously am not going to take the opportunity here to ring the bell on working with an agency. It's a good way to offset and outsource labor, instead of having to keep it on your own payroll. But at the end of the day, nothing in digital marketing is a secret. Until recently, you couldn't learn any of this stuff in a college. You could learn the fundamentals of marketing, but most digital marketers of a certain age, at least, are self-taught. And there's tons of resources online that can really help you get started if you're trying to teach yourself digital marketing. So, maybe I can follow up with Scott and provide a big list of authoritative industry sites and blogs and stuff that I would recommend if you're personally trying to begin your own kind of digital marketing journey and start to educate yourself on a lot of these things. Some quick ones off the top of my head. Search Engine Journal is huge. Everybody reads Search Engine Journal in the industry. So if you want to start kind of learning about the latest, greatest from Google, particularly, Search Engine Journal is great. Marketing land, search engine land. when it comes to social media examiner's good. Their website's a little hokey, and the guy who runs that site, Michael Seltzer, sometimes says some not so advisable things about SEO and paid search. He thinks that social is like the greatest thing, and that's all you should do. But he does interview and have a great podcast, and talks to a lot of digital marketing experts who really know their stuff. So Social Media Examiner, off the top of my head, is another good one. WordStream for paid search, PPC Hero. There's a lot. So I'll follow up with Scott and give him a big list, blogs and industry resources. There's no secret sauce when it comes to marketing. A lot of it is just accumulating all of that knowledge and then learning how to apply it, right? And knowing how to figure out like when things change in the industry, what does that mean for you and your brand, and how do you shift and pivot to sort of roll with the punches, as it were, and adapt to whatever kind of new things out there, So does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's great. So we'll get those and we'll have them posted by end of the day, first thing tomorrow morning on our Townhall website as a resource. And Matt and I aren't even in the same state right now, but he really took off from a question that I was thinking of for operators specifically. What are the blocking and tackling kinds of things, and which you sort of spoke to as far as resources. But then what are some pitfalls that you would see? We have a gamut here on this town hall, from an independent single owner operator to some franchise owners who may have multiple within a franchise or just within their own brand. But for the owner operator or maybe GM who might be on here, what are some things that they want to make sure that they don't do? What are some pitfalls they need to look out for when it comes to marketing and social media?
3 things I can think of off the top of my head are: in paid search, if you're using the wrong type of targeting, you can waste a lot of money. So like broad match, I see some heads nodding. So I'm sure, anyone who's tried their hand with paid search will know that if you go broad, super broad match and phrase match, and don't pay attention to what your negative keywords are in paid search, you can end up spending a lot of money on things that don't even make a lot of sense. I was at a conference recently called MozCon, which is a big SEO, and there's a lot of paid search marketers there too. And a guy named Will Reynolds, who's really, really respected in the industry, had this really long story about how he's doing paid search for a turkey farm, and realized he was getting all the kinds of wrong clicks that that you can sort of expect from running a turkey farm, because his clicks were coming from people searching for the country turkey. So, and his kind of takeaway is like, Google knows it's serving the wrong search result when it gives you, it understands intent, it filters intent all the time, but Google will happily take your money and serve your turkey farm up to somebody searching for the country turkey in a heartbeat. Something like, I think that Google books something like $6 billion a year. Is it billion? Maybe it's 500 million. I don't remember exactly. Google books a large amount of revenue per year based on mistargeted spend. And part of its core business model is to do that. So it's not working with you in any kind of meaningful sense of the word. And Google even requires people, to, if you ever look at Google's like recommendations, it will recommend that you do things that don't make a lot of sense. So in other words, it'll recommend that you use its machine learning functions on ads, and those don't always do well. And it'll recommend that you run certain types of ad types that don't make sense for your business model, things like that. So, getting in there and kind of understanding what works for your business, what user intent is, and really building up those negative keyword lists before you really attempt to get in there and spend a lot of money in Google search. That's what I would say is the right thing to do. It can take an experienced marketer to kind of help you get started with that, but that's probably the biggest incipient danger in the marketing ecosystem, if you ask me, is just accidentally like blowing a ton of money in paid search and not getting a lot of return for your investment. You know, Facebook's a lot more display based. It makes a lot more sense in terms of how you like set up those audiences and you know, but understanding again, you know, that user intent in Facebook is really, and social media in general is super important, because the users aren't actively searching for something the way that they are in search, right? So creating content in social that can help to activate that passive intent and make it into active intent is super important. It's just difficult sometimes to figure out how to bridge that gap, create that right message, and ultimately drive the user towards something that you can monetize. So that's another mistake, is going into social, maybe with the, maybe sort of like with a field of dreams mentality, right? The whole, like, if you build it, they'll come. You have to create something that's going to maybe gradually walk the user into making a transaction with you. And then SEO, I would say your biggest danger there is simply listening to the wrong person and doing something black hat, getting your website, you know, banned by Google, or, you know, buying a bunch of backlinks, for instance, you know, like thousands of toxic backlinks pointing to your website, where you have to start over with your domain. I know a lot of brands change their name and change their domain that they've been sitting on for 20 years. It has all this great SEO equity, and they're, you know, they'll redo their website and change the URL. And you got to make with SEO, you have to make certain decisions about what you've built up over the years and protect that asset sometimes. So those would be, I guess, across the three channels that I kind of touch, those would be the three biggest mistakes that I would say, if you're kind of starting out on your own, that you could make.
Great. I appreciate that.
So Eddie, we have a question from Sven. In an earlier session, I'm sure many people came from the IATP Zoom, and they learned that even the best plan for reopening is worth nothing if you cannot communicate it effectively with your guest. What would you recommend to operators in terms of how to use social media to connect with their guests before, during, after reopening, and like best practices, best way of going about that?
Yeah. So I guess first and foremost, transparency is key, right? So what, when you're during the current situation, I would recommend creating content that just reminds the user that you're still here, and anything around like you know, kind of major decisions as a brand around that you've had to make in response to the crisis. You know, sometimes it's better to kind of lay all your cards on the table and be transparent. If you had to make a major business decision, like temporarily laying off a bunch of workers or something like that, you know, there are communication strategies you can create around that on social, where you can actually build up a lot of goodwill around being super honest with the users. But, you know, my thought is, as you move into, we move back out into the normal and start to communicate a reopening plan, you know, I think this is where understanding consumer fears and consumer concerns are really going to matter. So there are going to be a lot of consumer fears around shared surfaces, large gatherings. So, you know, I would create a lot of visibility around hygiene and disinfection practices, you know, prevention measures. There's going to be downscale capacity, contact-free transactions. You know, these seem pretty obvious, but creating good, rich video content that showcases this stuff and, you know, maybe puts a face on your efforts to reopen can do a lot. You know, you can create a lot of trust just through candor. It's just a matter of addressing that consumer fear head on and being ready to answer some tough questions. So, you know, at the end of the day, a communication plan that regularly emphasizes maybe not just what you're doing now, but what you're planning to do is going to help to put those consumer fears at rest. And then I would recommend mixing that type of messaging and some of the sorts of kind of fun, engaging material that Scott mentioned earlier, you know, I mean, remind everybody how cool your ninja course is, you know, remind them, you know, about those, how fun the trampolines are and the climbing walls and things like that. You know, you don't want to focus too much on that proactive sort of return to normal message. I would mix it in with kind of, you know, some brand communications around those features of your parks and things like that.
That's awesome, Sven. Thanks for being actively participating. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Saw that you asked.
Oh, I had one other idea here, and I think Scott and I had talked about it before. So, you know, one thing I can think of is that you know, the CDC's recommendations, one of the major recommendations that I've read for protecting yourself around the virus is around physical fitness, you know, particularly cardio. So having a strong respiratory system naturally means you're kind of in a better place to recover quickly. And so I think that represents a real opportunity for youth fitness brands, you know, kind of as we move into this new world, because, you know, at the end of the day, if you have a product that can help build those things up, it's going to benefit you to figure out how to emphasize that message, right? You know, I think that's really one of the big advantages that you as operators kind of have going into this new phase that we're all going into.
Yeah, emphasizing, you know, the concept that many of us already do is that idea of you know, active fun, you know, so that you have kids who are burning calories and they're not really aware of it because they're having fun. Whereas if you told them to go, you know, run laps, they're just not going to do that.
They're going to see that as a punishment, you know, but a active fun that really, really encourages a much healthier kind of cardio vascular system. It's win-win for everybody. You know, the only thing you have to do is overcome that fear around the shared surfaces, public spaces. If you can get around that and you can communicate that message, I guarantee you it's going to resonate with parents a lot. You know, there's an emotional message at that core that, you know, you want to be positive about it, but at the end of the day, they care about their children, and they certainly care about protecting them in a way that is also going to be, you know, fun. It's not going to scare them. It's going to engage them. So there's a huge advantage there particularly for this type of brand. You know, I think you know, there's different ways to iterate that message. There's different ways to, obviously, you know, kids, you know, being active and creating that messaging, but that's ultimately going to benefit you.
Yeah, I also think it would be good to have a series. If you made a video series, as we were talking earlier, you can make it fun, you can make it lighthearted, but just to show everything you're going through to really clean and keep everybody safe, because that's what a lot of people are questioning right now is how are we going to keep everyone safe? How are we going to keep my children and my family safe in these places? So if you can make a video series and be completely honest without putting a gray slant on it, just keep it light and fluffy. We're taking every measure we can, make them feel comfortable. And that also helps your employees know that they're going to be safe there as well. So that's just the way I look at it.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, if you probably will have employees who are responsible for doing a lot of the disinfection and stuff like that. So showcase them, right? So meet Josh, you know, and you get some video of Josh with maybe a mask on his face, and he's, you know, waving and he's like wiping down a surface or something. You know, I think that's going to help to, you know, reassure people that they're, you know, engaging with the right brand that has their health interests in mind.
Yeah. And if you're going to do things like, a lot of retail stores are going to be taking people's temperature as they come in. So if you're going to do things like that, just let people know, hey, we're going to be doing this as well. You're also going to have to stand 6 feet away in line, and whatever measures you're taking, just give people the information before they get there so they're not surprised by anything, and so they feel more comfortable coming to you in the first place. So I think just completely above board with everything will really get people in your door more than your competitor's door.
I know that another good tactic that I see a lot of brands using are Facebook live broadcasts. And, I guess most platforms are now developing a live broadcast capability, so you can just, pick your favorite social channel and use it. But those live broadcasts have a real sense of authenticity to them that you don't necessarily get from a curated piece of content. It's just, obviously you have to be careful about a live broadcast, that you have the right person has to be doing the live broadcast and really give a real-time sense of what's happening at your gym or at your facilities with one of those types of broadcasts. I mean, obviously, you want to try to get some of the video, photography release stuff taken care of. That might be something you can build in your waivers or something like that. But if you can kind of overcome that hurdle, live broadcasts are really kind of a valuable way to supplement all of that too, I think.
Yeah, agreed. All super great ideas and thoughts around engaging, current customers, really reaching new customers as people just start to think about what they're going to do when they get out next. We follow our customers on social media, and in Tennessee and here in Georgia, FECs are starting to open up, and we noticed that when they made that announcement that anyone who can turn on the TV realizes we're a country that is fairly divided across the spectrum on reactions to whether we should reopen or not. But how do you suggest that an owner operator in their social media respond to the negative comments that come into their social media, and how do they respond to the positive ones?
Yeah, so this is always a pain point for everybody that I speak to, because social media is a conversation. It's a two-way conversation, so if you're not getting some negative feedback through your social media, I would actually challenge you to say you're doing it wrong, because it just means that you're not getting much engagement, and you're not reaching a broad enough sort of cross-section of people who come into contact with your brand in order to even get that negative feedback communicated back to you. So it probably means your social media channel is pretty quiet and doesn't have a lot of engagement on it. But that's one of the side effects of social media particularly, but also, Google My Business, that you're going to get some negative feedback from time to time. Now, what you're doing when you respond to that, though, I've seen a lot of businesses make the mistake of personalizing it and maybe trying to engage with the customer in a way that addresses their, whatever their particular complaints are, in a really kind of like maybe in a way that airs too much dirty laundry, if to kind of put it mildly. And what I would recommend you do is think more about that response as a response is a response to the hundreds, if not thousands, of people who are going to see that response, more than a response to that individual user. And I think that will change maybe the way that you interact with that type of feedback. You're addressing that feedback in a public forum, and you want to be mindful of it. So what we always recommend you do is, no matter what the user says, you empathize with them, right? So sorry you had that experience, or sorry that you felt that way. We certainly would like to talk to you about it further. And here's the phone number or email address of somebody who would like to speak to you. And that kind of answer generally works in most cases as an initial response. You address, you empathize, and then you move the conversation offline. And so that way you're not going back and forth with the user. You're not, you're not talking to them. I deal with businesses in the power sports industry, for instance, who said, I wasn't able to get financing through you. You misrepresented, and sometimes the owners will be like, well, that's actually subject to credit approval and blah, 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 blah. And really it's like, it's not really necessary to address those particular current concerns. You just say, listen, sorry that you felt that way. and we'd like to talk to you about it a little further. So give us a call here. And they continue to go ballistic, and you continue to provide kind of reasonable, measured responses, I guarantee that all those other consumers who come and look at your reviews and how you handled that thread of messages, they're going to side with you. You know, I'm sure everybody's read a series of really crazy, over-the-top reviews, and the consumer progressively looks more and more crazy while the brand just kind of maintains composure. And that's, you know, that's ultimately how I'd recommend that you guys deal with negative feedback. Positive feedback's easy. You want to express gratitude and, you know, maybe even encourage more positive feedback. Hey, keep it coming. We love hearing this stuff, you know?
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. As an operator who spent 6 years, you know, kind of dealing with Yelp and 5-star ratings on, you know, different social media platforms and responding to both positive and negative, you know, really taking that deep breath and not taking it personally was not necessarily easy to do, but the right thing to do when engaging customers online. And I would just echo that a measured response consistently yields much better results, because as you said, in general, people can read between the lines and figure out that there was more to the story that they're not understanding, that you're doing well. So
and Yelp,
appreciate that.
Yelp was probably the worst one, right, Scott? I mean, the negative responses on Yelp, there's just a culture there, right?
Yeah, there is. And Yelp as a marketing company is just ruthless. they
are
ruthless. So they'll call you constantly.
I remember
I deal with them quite a bit.
In past experiences for myself in marketing and having to help people get those comments offline, you know, into a private conversation, I would always ask the question at the end after we got everything resolved for that person. All right, so how could we have handled this better? Or, you know, how could we? And 9 times out of 10, it was finally somebody heard me. That's all I wanted. I wanted somebody to hear me. So if you make them feel heard, make them know they're heard, and make them know that they are as important as they believe their question or concern is, they're truly going to feel satisfied and satiated 100% away from the conversation. And then they will go and say, they will advertise for you and say, man, if you need anything, you go to this place because they'll take care of you. And Chick-fil-A and Disney are 2 that teach you that every single day. I mean, it's amazing.
Oh yeah. Really good examples of brands that handle that sort of communication really well.
Yeah,
for sure. The, you know what, we've seen brands actually reacquire customers after kind of, you know, handling them that way. We've seen them continue to do business with customers who've been, you know, by all indications, lost to the fold. So it can happen, you know, that a customer comes back to you after experiencing a really good sort of experience. So I didn't mean to say that you shouldn't be thinking about that consumer at all. I was just thinking, like, you know, the public forum kind of aspect of that really drives things. And then, you know, on top of that, Google My Business, you definitely want to respond to all of your reviews on Google My Business, because that particular one, unresponded reviews play a partial factor into your visibility in the local map hack. So if you're being more responsive in your reviews, Google actually tends to value your listing more, to signal to Google. So that's one other thing to know about reviews.
Can I ask you a question about that? There's a split train of thought, and I have my own opinions I won't share right now, but a lot of people go in and they try to have bad reviews erased, you know, and they try to turn off their reviews, or they'll try to turn, you know, on Facebook or comments or wherever somebody can, respond, Google My Business, whatever. And I was wondering, do you suggest that people turn those off, or do you suggest that they leave them on and address them head on?
Yeah, I would recommend that you do not, don't turn them off. Yeah, absolutely. It's about engaging in a conversation with your consumer. Ultimately, if you're, like I was saying, if you're not doing those things on social media, or in kind of public forums, you're missing a really valuable opportunity. Because here's the deal. Studies have shown, I'm trying to find the particular, I went out to Google to find this particular study for you, but brands with 4.8 and 4.9 star reviews have been proven to convert on site at a higher rate than ones that have 5-star reviews. Mm-hmm. So why is that? It's because the consumer sees that lower star rating, that slightly lower star rating, and realizes that they're dealing with a real brand here. You know, they're not dealing with some brand that is like, you know, because product reviews on Amazon. I don't know if you guys who's been on Amazon recently and seen product reviews there.
Every day.
Exactly. Do you trust them? I don't trust any product reviews on Amazon because they're so engineered. Amazon's done very little to prevent people from gaming the system. That, you know, there's almost no seller on Amazon that has really low ratings. You know, they just change their name, you know, and move on and pay people. And it's the same thing on the App Store, but Google and Facebook both have created, you know, arguably good ecosystems. I know that there's fake reviews on both, but they've created a pretty good ecosystems to where you can trust those reviews a lot more, you know?
Yeah.
And I'll find that source for you, because that stat is really striking about brands that have slightly lower star reviews, how they do convert at higher rates in general. And I'll send that along to Scott with some of those other resources I have, because that, to me, that particular bit of intel, which has been reinforced by several studies at this point, really shaped what I tell my clients to do as a marketer, because I don't know, it kind of just speaks for itself. You know, it really speaks to your authenticity as a brand. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, makes perfect sense.
I completely agree. Yeah.
Well, hey, we're at about 7 minutes to the hour, and I know many of us are running back to back on different meetings. And so I just want to make sure that we provided good value to you. With Eddie's permission, we'll put his contact information if you want to shoot him a question that you have.
Yeah.
Follow up.
Yeah.
We'll list that at the townhall.
Send it all my way, guys, for sure.
So we'll let that, we'll post that, as well as the resources that Eddie has spoken about. And next week, just to kind of cue it up, I've worked on contacting some different vendors around cleaning. And there's some really great information out there. I know a number of you have probably already researched on your own. I've done quite a bit. So I want to bring one, maybe two different people to talk about what it looks like to clean. And then we kind of combine that with, you know, how do you talk about that in social media, the things we just learned, so that you're giving people a heads up on what they can expect around keeping your park clean. So look forward to seeing you all next Tuesday at 2 Eastern right here for Town Hall. So thanks for participating, and have a great afternoon.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Eddie. Thanks, Sven. Good to see you, buddy. Almost done. A couple more to drop off, and we'll do a quick recap. Awesome. Okay, guys, I will be right back. Give me 60 seconds.
I think it went pretty well.
Yeah, that was a good one. Another one.
Yeah.
Another good one for the books.